Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Harrisburg City Council Legislative Session, Tuesday, April 12, 2016. Council members, please put all your electronic devices away, please, at this time. And I'm calling this meeting to order at 6:10 p.m. Mr. Petrosky, please do the roll call.
Mr. Allett? Present. Mr. Baltimore?
Here.
Ms. Daniels?
Here.
Ms. Hodges?
Present.
Mr. Johnston?
Here.
Mr. Majors?
Here.
Ms. Williams?
Here. Thank you. Moving on to identification, Mr. Baltimore.
Yes, can we all have a moment of silence for the sick, shut-in, homeless, those incarcerated, and particularly this week, two good friends of mine died, a gentleman by the name of Anthony Wright and Anthony Dozier. Have a moment of silence for their families, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baltimore. Pledge of allegiance, Mr. Allett.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for everyone for coming this evening. Before we get started, I want to announce a change in the next scheduled legislative session. Instead of being on April 26th, which we all know is Election Day, so please get out there and vote, we are going to change it to April 27th, 2016. And moving on, I just want to make a statement about the three members who resigned from the Environmental Advisory Council. It's unfortunate that they did resign, and I would like to thank them for their service that they put into the city of Harrisburg, and I want to wish them well in their future endeavors. But also I want to say that kudos to Ms. Sandra Reed, who was the instrumental in getting the trash cans. I understand the paper has said that the council did that, but she pushed for cleaning this city up. She was very vocal about how the city of Harrisburg was so dirty, and she really pushed for everyone to do their part and make sure that we do our part in getting the city together as far as the waste, the trash, recycling. So I just want to say thank you to her. And we will be looking at filling those positions in the near future. Moving on to communications, I have Roy Chris and Ms. Parker, who would like to do a 10 or 15-minute presentation to the council. Okay. 5 minutes then. Sure. 5 minutes. Okay. Thank you. Ms. Parker and Mr. Chris.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting us and asking us about our trip and our conference. The City of Harrisburg was selected out of many applications across the country to attend the leadership conference presented by the Center for Community Progress. Oops. There's two flyers there, and you can Google them. They're a think tank, an advocacy group out of Flint, Michigan, but they also have an office in Washington, D.C., and they do a lot of advocacy for distressed communities. They talk about issues that are always a challenge to communities all across the nation. So fortunately, we did apply some time ago. Actually, it was presented to us by Dave Patton, and he couldn't go. But we did apply along with the Redevelopment Authority and the City of Harrisburg, City of York, City of Erie were representatives for the state of Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., two communities from Virginia, which were Richmond and Danville. And then California had representation, Oakland and Fresno. Yep. Okay. So it was very well represented from different communities across the nation. Everybody with similar challenges, but yet different assets, different strategies, and it was a time to share and compare and see where we were in relation to each other, to give each other ideas and support, to talk about new ideas. And so Roy and Neil, myself, represented the city. And then the Redevelopment Authority was represented by George Payne and Brian Davis. And then the Housing Authority had a representative in Sangor Mans. And we made a small presentation about our city, about what we're all about. And then we also then had 4 days of intense discussion on issues in common. And here's our itinerary, our curriculum for the week. We were happy to find out, and we'll, Roy and Neil can probably chime in any time, but we were happy to find out as we began to discuss. There were probably about 100 people there and many great presenters, people who've written books, people who've done studies. It was held at Harvard. Just a great opportunity to sit, and all day long, that's what we did. We studied and talked. And we were happy to find out that we're really pretty much ahead of the curve in addressing some of our issues. They were very interested to find out about our housing court and how we address our code issues with the housing court. Of course, everybody has to address blight and vacant properties, so we're probably on the same page with many of them, doing the same things. I know the city of York is interested in starting its own land bank. Erie may go with Erie County to start a land bank, but land banking seems to be the hot, issue, and how. But they're all different. Everybody's different on how they approach it. So it was very interesting in that regard. And I can have Roy and then Neil can chime in, because Neil spoke with solicitors from these communities and different legal challenges. Every state has different, laws, so everybody is able or limited by those state laws.
So one of the things that was quite fascinating was that everything was driven by data. So one of the things that we realized is we have a whole bunch of this data, but we haven't necessarily all put it into one place. So we're going to be working more with the Redevelopment Authority to do that, so that we have those abilities to track and to make decisions ahead of time. By that meaning, with the GIS map, we'll be able to map out certain things throughout the city and be able to make predictable outcomes, so that if we're seeing a specific issue, and I'm going to use an issue that may or may not even exist, just so that you can understand how this could be used. So if we're doing remediation and we see wet basements, and it's in a certain area of the city, and this house, and then a couple doors down, and this, and that. We start to track that, and we can make a predictable outcome that perhaps, if we look at maps, there was a stream there at one time. So how would we address that? How would we do that remediation? But we're also able to take neighborhoods and really get into the weeds, if you will, on block to block to block in order to stabilize neighborhoods. So how can we best spend our dollars given the data? One of the things as well is tracking mortgages. So where in the city are homes being sold? We can make, driving around, we can all predict, but once we take all that raw data and put it into one specific mapping tool, and realtors.com or something has those tools. So a lot of the software we don't have to purchase, they exist, but the idea is with GIS mapping and stuff to put all this information in there so we can start to be way ahead of where we are today. We have the information, we're just not really mapping.
And I'd say that, I know that all of you have seen some of our maps, so we already are doing GIS for vacant properties, we're already doing GIS for redevelopment-owned properties and judicial sale properties and repository properties. So we're doing that, but as Roy said, there's also some other data that we probably haven't been looking at that might give us a better guideline on some of our strategies. So. And
one of the interesting things we learned, so as you know, in Fresno County, there was San Francisco was there. All of us sort of looked at them like, are you kidding me? They're like, we don't know how to spend our money. Like, what do we? And we're like, oh, please, go away. Oakland, they had a problem where they have no more room. One, they can't build out, and two, they can't build up because in the 80s they put height restrictions. So the gentleman, my counterpart, if you will, from Oakland's like, look, if you could put your houses on a train, we'd take every one of your vacant houses. We'd love that. So it was interesting to see it. And then Washington, D.C., we sort of learned that they have their own rules. Congress makes their rules, and they can sort of do things that none of us necessarily can do. So that was interesting. But I included here statistics and information so that all of you could see. And you've probably all seen them before. But the comparison that we really found interesting was, so you see the U.S. and all those statistics, then the Commonwealth, and then Harrisburg. Of all of the people there from all over the country, we had the oldest housing stock. So that relates to deferred maintenance. That relates to a lot of the issues of blight that we see, the broken window theory and things like that. So not only do we have a very old housing stock, and as you see, most of our housing is before 1939, but we also have a city that was built for close to 100,000 people and 49,000 people. So some of the strategies that we talked about and that we're doing much to our amazement, we're already doing the things that they were talking about. So it was kind of an affirmation of all the things that we're doing, and it was good stuff. But I wanted you to have this information because it's a lot of good things that you know, I want to share it with you so you have it. So in the future, you can see some of the decisions we make are based upon a lot of these, you know, this information, and it'll be very helpful moving forward.
It was an excellent program. The lawyers were, I think we were all fascinated with the techniques that other places used that are and aren't available to the city of Harrisburg. And it did open a few avenues of things we could see that are definitely not being used in Pennsylvania, but the question is, are they allowed to be used in Pennsylvania? Two of the locations were taking houses and putting them into individual receivership as part of dealing with blight. So they may have 300 houses in separate receiverships with outside folks funding each of those renovations as a way to get those onto the market faster. And Pennsylvania, as far as we can tell, doesn't try anything like that. And so we're looking at questions like that. You know, we were on many, many issues ahead of the curve. Like, we're actually in the trenches doing the things that some people are proposing as solutions that they're trying out for the first time. So at least that was some affirmation that what we're doing is at least along the lines of the people who have been thinking about this full time and what their job is. That, you know, we seem to be down the same track. You know, it was, if you could be headquartered in Flint, Michigan and worry about blight, you know, it says a lot about your public service mode. And I think everybody there was in a public service mode. And if people don't know it, York and Erie are both third-class cities like we are. So there was a lot of exchanges about what is and isn't working. And I think we've made part of this program is to basically make long-term connections between the municipalities. They do it on purpose, you know, focusing on multiple places from one state. And they ask us to sort of report back along the way. And I think it'll be useful to everybody as we move forward.
And it already has been. An example I will give you is that Erie used to have a lead program, and they had a lot of risk assessors and people like that. So they've communicated with us, and so we've communicated with them. And so we've had other contractors also in the mix to the bidding, you know, if you will, which is kind of good because we want more people, as many people as we can, to do as much work as we can. So that was really good. Also, they were very interested in the ordinance that this honorable council passed about the housing code and how that was being done. So how did, between codes and council and the county, the president judge, how did that get developed? So they were really excited to hear about that, and we shared that with them. And, you know, they may not go that route, but they may, and if they do, they'll be borrowing it from all the work that you folks did. So that's good stuff, and it's going to make a big difference in the future.
And I think the biggest successes we saw were really, you know, not surprising in that they were when there was a collaboration between multiple public entities, you know, mixed with a few private ones. So when the local county and agencies are working together, the local housing authority, the local redevelopment authorities, the land banks, they have, you know, there's some people that have put a lot of thought into whether it's a good use of public money for everyone to sort of be doing their own thing, or whether they coordinate and fund together one entity to do that work that they all need to do. And there was some real successes from some of the presenters, actually, from some very hard-hit cities, and how much they've been able to get done in just a few years from where they were. You know, so for Harrisburg, I think that's a long road, but it seemed that that was the model that is getting the most, you know, actual good. And I will note, most people's focus there was on the actual individuals that live in their towns. I mean, that was really the end of the day. What they wanted to talk about is we'd elected officials there. You know, we had a lot of lifelong public servants, and their focus really was on how this affected people's lives that they're supposed to serve. And it was good to at least hear that on a routine basis, that is really the concern for people in local government across the country. It really didn't matter what part of the country they were from.
We highlighted everybody gets CDBG funds in some manner, so we did talk about how CDBG funds are used, and they are using it in some creative fashion. They do focus and target like we do, and that's one of the, you know, the key focuses is you target and focus dollars. So all your efforts are focused on phases of the city, you know, taking neighborhood by neighborhood, neighborhood placemaking, mixed use, making sure that everybody has affordable, safe housing, you know, for everybody. And so those are, you know, some of the same goals that we're doing, and, you know, so we're all kind of going in that direction. That was a good, like you said, affirmation of what we're doing.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Any questions, council members?
Is there one thing that you took back that we can implement that's new, that you'd like to focus on, try? That you heard that you just thought we could do right now?
I think I believe it's the data gathering, that we don't, you know, we did the data on the properties, you know, that we know because we have them and we have a good GIS, we have good GIS people, but there's other data that we can collect that we should be following, such as the mortgages, like we said, land transfers, we don't really track that, and we should. And not that it's not out there, we just don't have the staff, but we're going to try to do that with the redevelopment authority. They're going to help us do that.
Because that is really going to help us to, you know, we all do good work, and I believe everyone who's sitting here really loves the city. We wouldn't be here if we didn't. And we really want to do what's best for the residents, but that data is going to help us to make better decisions ahead of time. And that's really key. And stabilizing neighborhoods and being able then to predict from all that data when something starts to slip, before you would physically really notice it, that data is going to predict that for us. And that's a huge, huge difference, because that makes us proactive instead of reactive.
I see here you have improving, one of your classes was improving rental housing through strategic regulations. So how they accomplish that? Or what was the session about?
It was about rental registration, so that there are some communities that have very strict
And
rental
there's
registration.
strategic methods?
And inspections.
Okay.
Yep.
To encourage people out of the house, the rental, into ownership?
No. That was more for that session. Now, we did talk about that, and we, you know, talked about how we're strategizing to get people in homeownership, because that definitely is a focus. Getting, you know, less renters, more into homeownership. But there are many barriers. It's not just housing stock, not just housing inventory, but can you get them mortgages? You know, can you clean up their credit? There are many barriers to homeownership. So we did talk about that. But that particular one was rental registration, so you don't get these landlords that are doing, you know, SROs and transitional housing, but they have inspections to say, you know, everything is up to code in your rental.
And that strategically ties in with the code enforcement?
Yes.
Can we do something like that?
We do.
We
have
do.
some- We do have that.
Yeah,
already.
we do. We
So
do.
every new rental
Within
triggers
every 5 years.
an inspection?
Every 5 years, right?
Within
That
every
is-
5
Right,
years.
yeah.
In theory, that's the
Every
challenge.
five
Yeah, you
years?
should try to catch, yes,
So,
should do more often.
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Like, I know about the program,
Yeah.
but I know, like, within, like, when it was passed, it's basically made for, like, the code inspector. They have a standard sheet where they go in and they look at it, and they evaluate it, and then based upon that, they'll let the property owner know, because they have to pay every year for to register with the city. And then through that, their property is inspected once every 5 years. And I think we have, over like 11,000 properties that we have to inspect within those 5 years. So it is a lot of pressure on our small code enforcement department to get to those inspections, as well as dealing with the complaints that come in as well. I know that takes up a lot of their time of going out, completing inspection, and then doing the follow-ups, because of course, you know, most of the time they'll come across some issues, and then it's about follow-up, and if the homeowner doesn't do what they need to do, then it's about following up to take them to court. So in essence, that's all, you know, a process. And I know I had some discussions, but we talked before about, I guess who else is supposed to do inspections on?
The Public Housing Authority.
Public Housing Authority is supposed to be doing inspections as well. So I think it's about making sure, you know, there's whether it's a collaboration, not a collaboration, but just say if we were to get to some place first, or they were to get to some place first, making sure there's some type of information sharing to make sure things are kind of, you know, being enforced, so people are living in safe, comfortable environments.
And then also, just so you know, we didn't have to pay for, the Institute paid for our lodging and all our food. So we just had to pay for transportation, so.
That's wonderful,
Yeah,
thank you.
it was great.
The other component, back to what you were saying, one of the things we discovered too is that it's kind of amazing, and it's a testament to everybody here, how much we're doing with how little we have. Because many of those places are just so much more than us, and just, you know, you could see all the Rust Belt communities, you know, that were there. There were people there from Youngstown as well, and we have the same story. The other communities didn't have that. They all have blight, they all have graffiti, they all have things like that happening. But ours, our budget and our revenue sources are significantly different. And then, of course, the ability then to prosecute was different too. It seems that Pennsylvania has a very archaic system versus some of the other places, but we're much older. So, you know, we're 200+ years old versus maybe California's over a little over 100. So it was unique to watch, but it really speaks volumes to me. It really did, of the commitment that everyone has to this community, to the people who work here, to the elected officials, to all of us, because we're really, I'm not saying this just to make everybody feel good. The fact is, we're really doing a whole lot with not a lot. And we're getting stuff accomplished, and we're all making a difference. So it was a good thing.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Allett?
Just one question to your point about doing a lot with very little. How did that compare with the other Pennsylvania communities?
Pennsylvania communities, they're all,
We all have the same box that we're in.
Right. Well, that's I'm
Yeah.
wondering from a that same.
The Pennsylvania communities are probably pretty similar. Though it's, you know, when you look at Oakland's or you look at Fresno.
Right, obviously,
So
revenue.
we
It's the
were all
revenue sources
interested
are
in the
different.
same solutions other people have. That,
Well, but I'm wondering too,
So-
because like one of the concerns I've always had is the revenue being too heavily focused on like tax-based initiatives as opposed to something else. How's that mix look like in some of the other communities?
Well, there's a lot that went to that, including, for reasons that are unclear to us, 26 states under TARP were declared to have a certain level of fiscal emergency. That money is still there from the U.S. Department of Treasury. Pennsylvania is not one of them. That money is going to things like blight remediation. So
Right.
one town had a $35 million grant, not a loan, to deal with blight remediation. And
Right.
we are not in line because the state either didn't qualify or didn't apply for it. And there's still money in the program because they're in new rounds of applications, but because we didn't get in the original, Pennsylvania didn't get in there. So we don't have some of these things that they were able to really experiment with when people give you real chunks of money. So Pennsylvania's in the same problem as Erie and York that we were. I think the folks from York were pretty hardball folks. I mean, the ones that do codes, you know, they're ground up guys. Codes guys become sort of in charge over time from the bottom up. They were no nonsense. You know, they're gonna cite people. They're gonna enforce. Pennsylvania's uniqueness seems to be we have all these houses that or lots that we get that we can't transfer back out. They couldn't understand why do we not want to go foreclose on people, take tax sales on people. It's because we have 300 the city has and 300 the authority has that we can't do anything with because there's no money to even maintain them. Others have seemed to not have that problem because of their structure. We also have a very long window, a tax sale to get possession by the public to get it. We're back where someone's taking care of the property. It is a minimum of 3 years in Pennsylvania, where other people it's 12 months. So we have 3 years of neglect, if it goes smoothly, for the public to stop it from being neglected. And there's many, many bumps in the road, and a lot of them are 10 years before it can come into public possession. And that's part of the blight problem, is that our system, they were very much encouraging us to lobby at the state level and have cities organized to do it, to identify very specific problems. Don't have a big menu. Take what can you change? And one of them was the notification for people that neglect a property to move it forward to the point that they can be taken possession of, whether through receivership, whether through something else. And that would make a huge difference in able to address your problem early instead of 5 years
Tying it
later.
to specific things, like I know when I was doing the research with Capital Cities in Annapolis, every year they apply for specific things from the state, so it goes to specific projects. So if 1 year they want to focus on blight remediation, they can get millions of dollars for blight remediation. It's something the state will allocate as a portion of that. And so every year it's something different, but it has to be a specific request.
Right, and I think we just have to have people that can focus on that, what the state has in their box. I think we have good relationships with the folks in the grant and on the state.
Right.
I just don't think there's an agreement at the state what money cities should be getting for infrastructure.
Maybe we can, do I don't want to say a better job, because I know you're doing a great job with what you have, but there never seems to be a shortage of money for law enforcement. There never seems to be a shortage of, new cop money. But when we're talking about infrastructure and blight removal, things that are really quality of life issues that HUD or the state could weigh in on heavily, there's always the shortage. We're really tight. And we're getting new cops when our crime rates are going down. And so if there's a way for us to, do that targeted focusing at the state level for lobbying specific things, like, a rental inspection every 5 years is unacceptable. Just ask any tenant. They talk to us all the time. That's unacceptable. And we have to find a way to change the system, get more money to really attack our quality of life issues, because the only quality of life issues that we seem to never run much short on money of is, law enforcement, and targeted specifically in our community for what, may soon be, some legal possessions, those types of things.
And this is not meant as any disrespect to any organization, but blight is a police problem. Because I'll give you an example how, and this is just in our world this happens. So whether or not it's meant to happen, it does. So if I purchase a house and I hurt my back and I can't make that mortgage payment, and that house goes through the process, and I walk away because through no fault of my own, things happen, and I just let the property go. I'm done. I can't take it. My life, it stinks. I move away, and that building sits empty. Certainly now we have that registry now for foreclosures, which is a big step, a real big step. But it sits there, and if it goes through that process, and say the bank decides we don't have time, we're not going to deal with that. So that 3 years comes and goes, but it stays. Now it starts deteriorating because the roof was bad before. So it starts leaking. Oh, by the way, it's been vacant now, and the insurance company said, well, we're not going to insure you next door because it's a vacant property. And you've lived there your whole life. So your children are out west somewhere where it's warm, and I can't get insurance on this property, so you know what? I don't know anything on it. I'm going to go live with my family because I don't want to live in a neighborhood where that's empty. Now there's 2 houses empty on the block. And it goes. And you know who goes in there? People who want to do nefarious activities.
Well, let me push back on that a little bit, because I'm not a huge fan of that broken windows policy stuff. We do have blight in our communities, that's true. But I don't think in and of itself that is a police issue. Crime happens at various rates in all communities. It's just that our communities get targeted more aggressively than other communities. So there's some validity to that, but in and of itself, it doesn't justify the numbers of young black men behind bars, to me. So to say that crime increases or drug activity goes through the roof when there's a vacant house, there may be some validity to that. I give you that, but it doesn't mean that things are any different in any other community. It's just that these communities are the ones that are targeted and then incentivized for these arrests. I mean, these police forces, and I know I'm veering off the economic development, but it's an issue that we need to push back on and then see if those same kinds of, dedications to blight removal in the social fabric can be targeted and funded as these police issues do.
And the point that you're saying, I agree with. But the thing can be that we can remove one of those, if you will, excuses or variables by preventing that property from falling into like, or inviting or encouraging that activity. And maybe a person who would be participating in that now is participating in fixing that. And now is a homeowner versus that. So that's my point to that.
I mean, I'd like for us to be able to somebody who abandons a property, for us to be able to get money to turn around and sell it. I'd like for us to be able to get money from HUD, to get more codes inspectors as we get more police officers from the DOJ. I mean, I'd like for us to do those quality of life things that, you know, I don't know if that's a lobbying issue, but we should be able to lobby the state and the federal government for those things.
And it's taking a closer look at our CDBG funds that we get and how we use those as well. Because that can also be, you know, more towards demolition, like codes officials. So.
Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what you guys were saying, I know the biggest thing is just the barriers of when, just like we were saying, when people leave their property and when people, like, when the government can actually step in to put it up to tax sale. Just from my experience alone, you know, you can watch a property deteriorate. Like, I can write citations, I can get in contact with the bank, and banks are, you know, and here's a bigger issue. Banks are about protecting their asset. So, you know, if you're talking about a property that maybe has like a high mortgage asset to the bank, you know, they'll do the bare minimum to protect it. But when we're talking about, you know, our older housing stock where their investment is not so high, a lot of times, you know, they may not respond as quickly as they were if the house was somewhere else. So then so this is all happening within this 3-year window, because you got to remember, if a house is being foreclosed on, their property owners walked away. And I've talked to property owners before, and their opinion is like, you know, hey, you know, I have no rights to the property, I can't do anything, so, you know, you can go ahead and cite me, but I just don't have the ability to do anything. So really at that point, it's that transition phase of dealing with the bank. And really, kind of what I think, you know, where more pressure needs to be applied is to close that window, where people who have, you know, chosen, decided to walk away from their property, and where it's in limbo under the bank. Because even during that time where it's that 3-year period, the bank still is under the tax roll. It's not even listed under the bank's name. It's still listed as that, you know, foreclosed property owner's name. So it's like that for about 3 years. So within that process, you know, depending on the bank and the property management company that's managing that property, things happen. And then within that things happen, if I'm a homeowner living next to that property or across the street, and I already had in the back of my mind about moving, and I see this property, you know, deteriorating, I may make that decision and say, hey, you know, I'm going to move somewhere else. Or if a property's for sale next door, it doesn't inspire someone to move next to a property that's deteriorating. So closing that turnaround time, which I think is more of a, I guess, a state issue, is where I think cities really truly need to come together to lobby to make sure that, you know, we are protecting our neighborhoods.
One of the realities that has come up is that even when you're done the process now, the title insurance companies no longer accept the deed that comes from the sheriff as actually giving you clear title. So they make you file yet another legal action if you're the buyer for an action to quiet title. So, I mean, which adds a whole other layer that the entire judicial process wasn't enough for them to give you title. So there's a lot of hurdles to overcome, you know, there are people trying to find solutions to it, but I think we don't kid ourselves that we got them all there. But it was beneficial. We learned that Baltimore has 100 codes enforcement officers, and their interpretation of their state constitution is they don't need a warrant, an administrative warrant, to come into a property for codes. So those guys can go in to do what they got to do, which was a fascinating idea, that you can just walk into people's houses as a local government and do what you need to do as long as you're not arresting someone. That's their view. They're not violating the federal constitution. They're not taking anything, but they can come in and force basically repairs by taking these houses because they say their state constitution is different. I don't think we're going to get that benefit anytime soon.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chris, and thank you, Ms. Parker. Certainly was an informational conference, and we thank you, Mr. Grover, as well, for going and attending and coming back and giving us an overview. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're moving on to courtesy of the floor. This time, anyone to my right, please come to the mic.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ron Johnson, 1847 Zarker Street, and I've come down here to ask for help. I'm glad I came down here on the night because to hear this topic that you were just discussing, on 1800 block of Zarker Street, there are 28 houses, and the majority of those houses are on one side of the street. Our homes are at the rear of the 1800 block of Market Street. Our problem is Niche Property has 3 apartment buildings, 1845, 1847, and 1849. Now, the 2 tenants in 1847 that just moved in, the one on the first floor and the second floor, are trying to open up a garage at our fronts, they're at our front doors. And the neighbors are calling me and they're having a fit because parking is tight for the people that live on the 800 block of Zarker Street as is. For them to try to take over all 3 properties, they're in the backyards right now because Market Street backyards are really long. So there's like 6 or 7 cars they're working on, but then there's a small garage right behind 1847 Market Street that they're going to try to open up as a full-on shop. And so I've been in contact with Dave Botero, William Garber, and he's telling me that it's a zoning issue. So I'm just trying to figure out what to do next before one of my neighbors get into it with one of these guys who have these cars all over the place. Because if you've ever rode down from 18th and Holly to 18th and Marbury and see how those illegal garages operate with cars all over the place and you can hardly get through, you would understand what our fear is. So I'm asking for some kind of help from somebody, anybody, before things get, the weather changes where it's really hot and it gets heated. And the second thing is, I'm also an officer and member of St. John Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. We've been in the city this will be our 71st year, and we're hosting a district conference for the Philadelphia district. And we're expecting over 250 to 300 people to come in the city this weekend. Starting Thursday night, we have the Hilton Hotel and the Overflow Hotel is the Crown Plaza. So I had contacted Councilman Johnson to welcome this Christian Methodist Episcopal 7th District along with our bishop into the city at Friday at 2 o'clock. So I just wanted to put that in there. There's some great things going on up on the Hill. I just wanted y'all to know that we are still doing great things.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else to my right?
Excuse me. Good evening. My name is Mr. Boyd. It's pretty good being here after we could not celebrate the Honorable Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. This is a structure here that was named after the Honorable Martin Luther King. I still say the same thing about the city that is a great city. We look around, and I am so glad, my brother, you said what you said about a police problem. If you go from 13th and Dairy, look at what you see. Just go to 13th and Dairy, turn the corner, walk back to the alleyway. And we need the police. I've said many times, standing right here, once again, saying we need someone to find out who is dumping, the illegal dumping. It is being done daily, all night long, it's being done. I'm only 5'1", and the garbage and dirt goes that high over my head. I have watched them. So I am so glad Building and Housing said that, because you're right. Have the police monitor those areas, because even the residents get so tired of fighting with people in that area, especially, I'm from there, to have someone threaten their life and look at people and say, what is the city going to do? And once again, I like to say this. There are many things said about the city of Harrisburg. I've heard about all the good things about they travel across the country. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is an old historic city. Once again, we don't have to travel anywhere to solve our problems here. if we can do it this way. Get rid of the outsiders that control this city. Then we can make a move here. Remember, there are people within the city of Harrisburg that have been here all of their lives. And they cry to me and scream to me and tell me they care nothing about us. And I keep saying it the same thing. And I'm setting it this much. And then we have honorable people that come from other parts of the Commonwealth that tell you, get with it. I don't have to get with anything because I know what's happening here. All I'm saying, once again, you seven are for us. I hope we have a mayor. I'm confused. And also the residents of this city are very confused. It seems that we cannot find anyone that's interested in us.
Okay.
If we read the daily paper, it's about taking from the residents that don't have the money. So when are we going to have someone in this city that really cares about the residents? Thank you.
Anyone else to my right, please? Anyone in the middle?
Good evening. I'm Jean Greco, and I live on 301 Chestnut Street in Harrisburg. I'm here about Bill 6, Resolution 2016. I'm sure I was told you're not going to deal with it tonight.
No.
But I just have 3 issues, if I may ask. Number one, is there a capital on a city such as a tax base that you have to place a referendum on a ballot before you can institute a tax increase? Is that true or false?
Mr. Grover?
There are times in Pennsylvania you can have a referendum. There's not on a third-class city where we have to have a referendum. Not for this particular thing. This is out of a statute that this particular.
Okay,
deals with.
well,
And
I don't know.
and
I'm not a
Councilmember-
lawyer. I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
Council member, she's talking about the LST tax. Okay. Go ahead, Ms.
Okay, and the other thing is dealing with a jump from $54, you're tripling it to $156. I have a lot of colleagues that I work with, and I'm new to the area. I've only moved here in October, so I'm still trying to understand the system and exactly what's going on, and why would somebody want to triple it? And does that mean that this city is that much in debt? I don't know what your debt is. Is that why you're doing it, tripling? And how much money are you planning on getting out of people that drive in from towns, that work in town, as well as from the local area residents? I mean, not everybody's made of money. I mean, I just paid $5 extra for my car registration. I mean, on top of what your regular registration is. So I'd like an explanation as to exactly what they're going to use $156 for per year, even though it's $3 per paycheck, but that's not the point. Not everybody can afford $3. Maybe that $3 can buy diapers for somebody if they need them, or groceries. I mean, it's a big jump. And I need to know how much money the city's in debt and what exactly you're going to do with the money besides roads and bridges. And, you know, I'd like an explanation.
We'll have a meeting April 19th at 5:30 in City Council chambers to address that. You may come at that time, and all the information that you would want will be presented at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? In the middle, anyone?
Evening, council members, honorable mayor. Jeremy Domenico, South Summit Street. I would just like to announce again that this Saturday is the Great Harrisburg Litter Cleanup. There are 3 major sites, Uptown, Midtown, and Allison Hill. If you're not registered, you can register on the day. If you work in Allison Hill, our homeowners is going to pay for your lunch. It's not just about cleanup, it's really about meeting your community, your neighbors, and we have a pretty good time. And we hope to see, I don't want to ask all of you to come to South Allison Hill, but come on down and have a great time, seriously.
Could you
Okay.
tell us the locations? I know you said Allison Hill, Uptown. Where exactly are the 3 locations that you're speaking of?
Unfortunately, I can tell you this, if any questions arise, I don't do tech, but you can go GHLC on Facebook,
Okay.
and it'll tell you the 3 different sites. I know where the site in Allison Hill is, but it'll tell you all the information, how to register. If you register, then we'll actually come to you to pick up trash, but we have to know where to come.
Thank you.
So we have a whole series of drivers set up, a lot of really good community partners that the press release will be afterwards. There were just too many people to get together this quick. And there's going to be a lot of people that deserve a lot of thanks, because it's a lot of people, even the city,
Okay,
really came together for this.
Mr.
Okay.
Majors is going to address that for me.
Mr. Minico, to your point, the 3 check-in locations on Saturday, on Allison Hill, it's Tri-County Community Action, which is at 1514 Dairy Street. In Midtown, it's 329 Harris Street. And Uptown, the location is Wesley AME Zion, which is on 5th and Camp Street. So folks that are interested can check in at those locations. The event starts at 9 o'clock, so I'm sure people will be there between 8 and 8:30, so you can start to check in and then get your bags, gloves, et cetera, and go out and help folks in our community to pick up garbage and litter throughout the city of Harrisburg.
Exactly, and please, this is the day to make a serious, just give back.
Okay, thank you very
Thank
much.
you
And
so
thank you,
much.
Mr. Majors. Anyone else in the middle, please? Anyone else to my left?
Welcome to our city. Good evening, Council. I'm William Cluck. In addition, on Saturday to the citywide cleanup, Dauphin County Recycling Center will be open and accepting electronics. So if you're bringing a television, it has to be a whole television. It can't be broken. But that's one of the biggest issues we have is people, when they move out of their apartments, are dumping their stuff on the sidewalk. So not just the city, which is doing litter cleanup, but Dauphin County also. The presentation by Ms. Parker and Mr. Chris was very interesting because I read in the paper today that Goldman Sachs is entering into a settlement over the mortgage crisis of, I think it's $5 billion with a B, billion dollars. And the articles I read said that some of that, and it's approximately $240 million, has to be spent on affordable housing, including addressing areas that are affected by natural disasters. I don't know if Pennsylvania is one of the states that is a party to that litigation and settlement, but I would suggest that your solicitor or someone may want to reach out to the Attorney General's office in Pennsylvania and say, is Pennsylvania a party to this settlement? How do we get those funds into Harrisburg, whether it's for blight remediation or affordable housing or the 14th Street sinkhole residents? I understand Election Day is the 26th, and you announced at the beginning of the meeting you're moving your legislative session to the 27th. I want you to know that's opposite Capital Region Water's monthly board meeting. And at that board meeting, we anticipate voting on the conservation easement that has been proposed for the property at the DeHart Dam. We've had 2 public hearings. The deadline for public comment ended, I think it was on the 8th. But I don't believe we've heard from anybody on council. And so what I'm telling you, and I'm telling the public, if you still want to say something, if you have concerns or objections, I'm going to still listen before I vote on the 27th, assuming I'm still on the board. We would like your input. Frankly, it's a no-brainer. It's $9 million, which we think is useful, and we don't lose control of the land. Lastly, I am currently the Vice Chairman of the Board of Capital Region Water, and I believe the majority of the new members on City Council have absolutely no idea what I do. You have absolutely no idea what the accomplishments are of the board. Mr. Majors does because he sat with Mr. Kurowski and I on the board when it was just the 3 of us as volunteers. And we saved this city from privatizing the water and sewer system. But for Mr. Majors, Mr. Kurowski, and myself, you may not have Capital Region Water. You may have a private company that would have raised your rates and not hired the people from the city. Now I understand the mayor is nominating people to replace me on the board. I feel disrespected in that there was no communication other than an email telling me that the CEO of Capital Region Water thinks we need new blood. The CEO of Capital Region Water denies saying that with respect to my position. So before you vote to replace me, take the time to sit down with me. Ask me about transparency. Ask me about minority contracting. Ask me about what we've done to save this city before you replace me.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Anyone else to my left? Hearing none, move on to the agenda. Approval of minutes, approval of the legislative session minutes of March 22nd, 2016. Are there any objections, corrections, or omissions? Hearing none, minutes will stand as such. Moving on to reports of committees, report from Chair Johnson, the Public Safety Committee meeting of Thursday, March 24th, 2016. Mr. Johnson, you ready with your report?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
A Public Safety Committee meeting was held March 24, 2016 at the Public Works facility located on Paxton Street. Present at this meeting was President Williams, Councilman Allott, Councilwoman Daniels, Councilwoman Hodges, Councilman Majors, and Brandon Flood, Executive Director of Pennsylvania Black Caucus, and myself. During that meeting, we discussed Bill 4 of 2016, which basically discusses reducing penalties for small amounts of marijuana. We took more public comment from the public who shared their views and opinions on different aspects of the bill. The meeting was a very, very informative meeting. It was also broadcasted on Channel 20, so if you weren't able to attend, you were able to watch the broadcast on our TV station. We're looking to have another committee meeting held here at City Council Chambers. That date will be announced, where I'm looking for opinion from my fellow council members of what we heard from the public and have us weigh in on how to draft this bill from our perspective now based upon public input. Once that date is confirmed, we will do a mass communication to the public so people can hear about our discussions and give public comment at the end. And that concludes my committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Moving on to report from Chair Hodges on the Parks, Recreation, and Enrichment meeting of Wednesday, March 30th, 2016. Ms. Hodges, are you ready?
Yes,
Sure.
thank you, Madam President. The Parks, Recreation, and Enrichment Committee held a meeting on May 30th from 6 p.m. until 6:10 p.m. The council members in attendance were President Wanda Williams, Vice President Shemaine Daniels, Westburn Majors, Ben Allott, Jeff Baltimore, and myself, Destiny Hodges. The only item on the agenda was Resolution 25, 2016, a resolution approving the submission of a grant application to the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources for the purpose of improving the river walk, slab, and steps in Riverfront Park. This grant is a request for the remaining funds to complete the project in time for the 100th anniversary of the component. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Hodges. Moving on to ordinance for first reading, Bill 9, 2016. Mr. Petrosky, please read it out.
Bill 9 of 2016 was moved by Mr. Williams, seconded by Mr. Allott. It's an ordinance adopting and approving modifications to the approved 2013 recovery plan for the city of Harrisburg, known as the Harrisburg Strong Plan, proposed by the coordinator for the city of Harrisburg and filed pursuant to the Municipalities Financial Recovery Act, and otherwise directing the preparation of ordinances, resolutions, agreements, and other documents for consideration as would be necessary for the adoption and implementation of those measures enumerated for the financial recovery of the city.
That will be placed in Administration Committee. Moving on to Bill 10.
Bill 10 of 2016 was moved by Mr. Majors, seconded by Ms. Williams. It's an ordinance vacating and striking from the official map of the city of Harrisburg a portion of Glen Alley between Yates Alley and Guy Alley pursuant to Chapter 3-109 of the codified ordinances of the city of Harrisburg.
That will be placed in Public Works. Moving on to Bill 11.
Bill 11 of 2016 was moved by Mr. Majors, seconded by Ms. Williams. It's an ordinance vacating and striking from the official map of the City of Harrisburg a portion of Guy Alley between Hudson Street and South 20th Street pursuant to Chapter 3-109 of the codified ordinances of the City of Harrisburg.
That also will be placed in Public Works. There's no ordinance for amendment, nor there's no ordinance for final passage, so we'll move on to resolutions. Resolutions 25.
Resolution 25 of 2016 was moved by Ms. Hodges, seconded by Mr. Johnson. It's a resolution approving the submission of a grant application to the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources for the purpose of improving the Riverwalk slab and steps in Riverfront Park.
Is there any question or comments on Resolution 25? Hearing none, please call the vote.
Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Mr. Baltimore?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels?
Yes.
Ms. Hodges?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Resolution 25 passes.
Thank you. Moving on to Resolution 28.
Resolution 28 of 2016 was moved by Mr. Johnson, seconded by Ms. Williams. It's a resolution ratifying the submission of an application to the Federal Emergency Management Agency for the purpose of funding the hiring of 5 full-time firefighters for the Bureau of Fire.
That also will be placed in Public Safety. Moving on to Resolution 29.
Resolution 29 of 2016 was moved by Mr. Baltimore, seconded by Ms. Williams. It's a resolution approving the preliminary final land development plan and lot consolidation plan submitted by Max Cohen of Meridian Recycling Limited to consolidate 3 lots at 651 Ulrich Street, 638 Ulrich Street, and 3243 Penwood Road, and construct a storage building with associated improvements on the site.
That will be placed in Community Economic Development. Moving on to Resolution 30.
Resolution 30 of 2016 was moved by Ms. Williams, seconded by Mr. Allett. It's a resolution appointing Ms. Charlotte J. Plains to serve on the Capital Region Water Municipal Authority Board of Directors, CRW.
That will be placed in Administration Committee. Moving on to Resolution 31.
Resolution 31 of 2016 was moved by Ms. Williams, seconded by Mr. Allett. It's a resolution appointing Mr. Garvey Presley Jr. to serve on the Capital Region Water Municipal Authority Board of Directors, CRW Board.
That will be placed in Administration Committee. Moving on to Resolution 32.
Resolution 32 of 2016 was moved by Mr. Majors, seconded by Ms. Williams. It's a resolution approving the City of Harrisburg's acceptance of a right-of-way dedication offered for the purposes of widening a portion of Kona Street between Yates Alley and Manada Street pursuant to Chapter 7-515 of the codified ordinances of the City of Harrisburg.
That will be placed in Public Works Committee. Moving on to old business, council members. Is there any old business tonight? Hearing none, moving to new business. Is there any new business?
I just quickly wanted to mention, I know that there's been a lot of, there are a lot of things happening regarding expungements because there have been several changes to the law. So a really good resource for anyone who's interested in whether they're qualified for expungements, redactions, or the sealing of records, Community Legal Services website from Philadelphia actually has a good flow chart so that you know where you are. And in the fall, Dauphin County Bar will be doing several clinics to help people either have their records expunged, redacted, or sealed.
Thank you. Is anyone else?
The Public Safety Committee will be having a meeting on Monday, April 25th. Monday's April 25th. At 5:30. The agenda will be advertised.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I have something to say. I just want to remind everyone to remind the youth of our city to apply for the Parks and Recreation jobs. The last, I guess the deadline to apply is April 15th, this coming week. And also, Black Girls Health will be having a seminar at Capitol Presbyterian Church. After you guys clean up, at the various locations, come to the church around 1 p.m. to learn how to eat healthy and to maintain your weight.
Thank you, Ms. Hodges. Anyone else? Moving on. The Administration Committee will hold a meeting April 19, 2016. I have 8 things in my committee, so look forward to having a long night there. It starts at 5:30. We might be here to 10. That also will include the LST tax that you talked about. Anything else from new business? Oh, I'm sorry. State Senator Robert Teplitz invites us to a roundtable discussion. It will cover municipal financial challenges and recovery. It's tomorrow, April 13th. It's from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. North Office Building, State Capitol, Harrisburg. Anything else, council members? Hearing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Meeting is adjourned.